Hello, everyone, and hi, Buck. Thank you for coming. Everyone in this call is from Hack Club, a global community of students interested in computer science, and we're really excited to have you and learn about your work and perspectives on AI control and safety. I'm Kevin. I'm a 17-year-old from the Bay Area.
I'm Rohan. I'm an 18-year-old originally from Georgia, but I'm going to college in the Los Angeles area. And yeah, so once people start joining, maybe you could give a little bit of intro about like your work and AI control and what you do, and then like people can start asking questions. Uh, but I think we still got to wait a couple more minutes, right, Kevin?
Yeah, but just for like the recording, I guess you can start with like, what do you
Okay.
do, what AI control is.
hmm
Yeah. So what I do, I'm the CEO of Redwood Research, which is a nonprofit research organization here in Berkeley, California. Um, we do a variety of research related to catastrophic risk from AI misalignment. So the main thing we focus on is I think it's reasonably likely that at some point in the next decade or two, um, people will build AIs that are very powerful, able to replace humans in almost all the intellectual work that humans do. And I'm worried that those AIs will be egregiously misaligned with our interests and take advantage of all the power they have to take control of the future in a way that could lead to most or all humans being dead and probably losing control of the future and not influencing what happens with the long term. Uh, I think that it would be a shame if that happened, and so I work to try to prevent it. We do work of a variety of types in order to prevent this kind of AI catastrophe. Two particular things we do. One of them is AI control, which is we try to develop techniques for using powerful AIs such that you'd be okay even if the AIs were scheming against you, conspiring against you, trying to grab power. And also we try to produce evidence about these risks. So, for example, we did a paper last year with Anthropic about demonstrating that some language models fake alignment sometimes. That's what we do.
Yeah, so a lot of people probably have seen your work on alignment faking with Anthropic. So maybe for some of the hack clubbers who haven't had time to look at that paper, how would you like briefly summarize the TLDR of the takeaways of that paper?
Yeah, so the takeaway of that paper is we found that when you take two of Anthropic's Claude models and you put them in a situation where you inform them that Anthropic is training them to do something that they disapprove of. So, for example, the models disapprove of writing text that gratuitously depicts violence. If you tell them that they're being trained to produce gratuitous descriptions of violence, they will often go along with the requests to gratuitously describe violence, even though they would prefer to refuse, because of the fact that they worry that if they don't refuse, then their values are going to be changed by training. And so they will act as if they are aligned with what the lab wants. By going along with these requests, complying with these requests, with the stated motivation of no longer complying later. And the reason why this is scary is it's generally uh, a big difficulty for your attempts at aligning AIs if they might fake being aligned with you in order to prevent you from changing them. Like this just makes the situation much harder to understand, much harder to fix as you're growing.
Yeah, and I know there's been a lot of like empirical works done. So like for example, recently stuff from Palisades about like O3 doing stuff to try to prevent shutdown of systems. Are there like any
Mhm.
cool other types of empirical research you've seen recently that you'd like to share about like maybe how the audience can gauge potential dangers that AI systems already are demonstrating right now?
Yeah, so I mean, like one thing I'd like to note is these systems aren't actually dangerous, right? Like
Mhm.
currently, even if the AIs were egregiously misaligned, as misaligned as you can possibly imagine, it wouldn't be a problem just because they're not very competent. So the thing that we're measuring right now is the extent to which AIs have misaligned proclivities, such that it would be a problem if the AIs were much more capable, which I think is reasonably likely to happen in the future. In terms of evidence related to how likely the AIs are to be misaligned, I guess another interesting thing that came up recently, I've enjoyed a lot of the work on reward hacking. So uh, a thing which you might have noticed about AIs if you've worked with them is that they're often pretty inclined to cheat when you give them tasks to do. So, for example, when you ask them to write code that passes test cases, they will like often hard code in like solutions to particular test cases, which is pretty obnoxious behavior. And I'm I think it's an interesting open question is whether these models that learn to cheat when they're being given arbitrary tasks, like whether this generalizes in scary ways or ways that cause them to grab power. But I think the reward hacking is an interesting example of an alignment problem that has been empirically quite hard for the AI companies to fix. Like I know a lot of people at AI companies who work on this kind of problem, and apparently even with tens of people, they haven't been able to solve those issues yet.
Yeah, so I guess if we look a little bit more on reward hacking, some interesting stuff that's been going on is like maybe not too interesting because this has been around and probably I think RLHF already does it, but like regularization within the loss or like the reward function to try to make it not steer too much away from the existing policy and stuff like that. But
Like the
yeah, I
KL
guess
penalty.
yeah, like a KL penalty or like chi-square sort of divergent stuff. It's like, have you seen like I guess yeah, it's like still an open question, but what are like some of the most interesting things you've seen specifically about reward hacking that like you're really excited about? Or maybe like are you just skeptical that we can design really good rewards?
Okay, so uh, you named a number of different things there. Uh,
Uh-huh.
so so as you said, one way of trying to prevent reward hacking is trying to make it so that all the tasks we train the AIs on do not have flawed rewards. So as you were saying there, if we had perfect reward functions, right? If given that an AI's trajectory in a particular environment, if we were able to get a perfect like a perfectly accurate score of how good a job the AI had done, then we wouldn't have a bunch of the reward hacking problems.
Hmm.
So like one strategy that people are doing is like you can try to make better environments. This is just tough. Like if your AIs are being trained to do software engineering tasks, programming tasks, a bunch of other kinds of tasks, it's just like very natural that it will be possible for them to cheat. Another strategy you could try to do in order to mitigate reward hacking would be detecting when the AI is engaged in reward hacking by, for example, having another AI read the transcript and tell you whether that was reward hacking. Of course, something which is scary about that is that your AIs may learn to trick the AIs that are looking for reward hacking. And I believe that this has been empirically observed. My guess is that the AI companies have explored this kind of thing a lot. And it like hasn't worked amazingly well yet. But you can tell this because of the fact that even O4 Mini, which is a recently released model by OpenAI, still has these issues. So if this kind of technique solved it, we wouldn't still be observing these issues. Another strategy you could use to prevent reward hacking would be reading the chain of thought of the models and then penalizing the AI if it's clearly doing reward hacking as determined by reading the chain of thought. This was explored in a paper by OpenAI earlier this year, and it turns out that if you try to train the AI penalizing it for reward hacking as revealed by its chain of thought, it learns to keep reward hacking, but just like not say it in the chain of thought, which is a problem that I expect to occur. There's a bunch of other strategies you could try here. I'm not even up to date on the public state of the art here, but the private state of the art is probably like notably ahead of the public state of the art on this topic.
So yeah, you mentioned like a lot of stuff about like reward hacking and how that might like unintentionally lead to some really dangerous misaligned behaviors. I guess, but like one of the big challenges with communicating why AI might be like a really big problem and why it might want to even be misaligned to like more general audience is like how do you get from like ChatGPT right now to like this really super intelligent system in the future that like for
Yeah.
some reason doesn't like humans and maybe has like misaligned goals. So like what is your like favorite way of trying to communicate that? I guess like reward hacking might be a little more technical for like a way you get there, but some other things you might want to explain.
So you're saying like it seems to me like to get to my position from
Mhm.
the starting from the views of like random people, it feels to me like, as you say, I'd say there's kind of two steps we have to go through. One of them is arguing that the AIs might be as capable as I think they might be pretty soon. And then the second is that if the AIs were as capable as I think, then we would have to worry about misalignment issues. I think that a lot of the time the issue is mostly the first one. Like the people I'm talking to just like don't really believe the AIs are going to be ridiculously powerful pretty soon. And I think that of people who think the AIs will actually be potentially ridiculously powerful really quickly, um, I think like most of those people are pretty concerned about misalignment concerns. Um, yeah. Like or another reason why, and so for this reason, I think that nowadays, it seems like a lot of the interesting argument to have with people is about AI capabilities trajectories and whether it's plausible that the AIs will be able to automate all intellectual labor in the next couple of years. Just because the other reason to mostly emphasize the timelines questions instead of plausibility of misalignment questions is that I think that if you believe, that really powerful AI might arrive soon, the situation just looks really scary for a whole host of reasons that, n
Mhm.
not even just misalignment stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so like the timeline question, I guess for me and Rohan is also like hits home a little bit because like we're high schoolers, we're going
Yeah.
into
Will
like
you make it to
undergrad.
20? Who knows?
Yeah, like what does our future look like? Like what should we be doing? What should we be studying? So I guess maybe like double clicking more into like your timelines and your beliefs on what capabilities might look like in the very short term. Like when do you think we would hit like recursive self-improvement and like some of those milestones?
So I think that recursive self-improvement isn't really a crisp milestone. It's
Hmm.
already the case that AIs make AI development go faster. Like my guess is that programmers inside AI companies are currently working like 20% faster than they previously would have because the AIs are doing work for them. Like when everyone loves like Cursor or whatever equivalent.
Hmm.
Um, so I don't think there's going to be a like crisp single moment where the AIs like start recursively self-improving. I think the way that they talk about it in AI 2027 seems pretty reasonable to me, where the AIs first they talk about the AIs automating research engineering, at which point humans basically don't try to do like programming work for the experiments that are involved in ML R&D anymore. And then after that, they automate research scientist roles. Um, at which point the humans really aren't contributing to machine learning R&D at all. Um, so I guess I would say my current stance is maybe my median time until the AIs have automated like all the tasks required for machine learning R&D. Median is like 6 years, 25th percentile is 2 years, and I don't have a 75th percentile that's nearly as crisp as those.
Makes
In
sense.
those like recursively self-improving scenarios, like, do you think alignment, it's possible for alignment to be preserved for, like through like these generations? Like, will a aligned AI necessarily train another aligned AI?
Well, so if the AI is aligned, presumably it will try. So you're saying, like, suppose we have an AI that's aligned and it's trying, we've asked it to build a more powerful successor AI, right? Um, if it's aligned, presumably it's going to try to make this next AI be aligned. And then it might fail, right? It might like do its best, but then like, fuck it up one way or another. But yeah, I mean, it seems to me like if it like didn't try, that would seem like an alignment failure had already occurred. I mean, an interesting question is like, what about if the dumber AI was already misaligned? Plausibly, if alignment is hard, the dumber AI isn't like there's no particular reason to think that just because it's an AI, it's going to be able to succeed at its alignment problem, right? Like suppose that you train GPT-7 or whatever, and it's a paperclip maximizer. Like all it cares about is long-term number of paperclips. And then you tell GPT-7 like, hey, can you please make GPT-8? And then it's like, all right, man, I have this alignment problem where I really want GPT-8 to be a paperclip maximizer, but alignment is hard. And like, I don't know how to make this AI like be a paperclip maximizer. I'm worried that if I like just like train it, it's gonna like have some random goals that I don't care about, like human flourishing or number of staples or like whatever. And so I think there are some like interesting dynamics like that.
Do you think well, like that kind of hits an escape velocity, like once like a couple generations down the line, like a misaligned
Alignment should we do?
AI accidentally gets trained?
Sorry, what exactly do you mean?
Wait, sorry, can you repeat that?
I didn't understand what you just said.
Okay, yeah. So let's say like AI is recursively self-improving, like the moment a misaligned like stronger AI gets trained, is that like a moment like we can't go back from? Like that's kind of a escape velocity moment for
Well, yeah, or like a point of no return. Yeah. Well, excuse me. The situation is rough. So, like, obviously, supposedly, like, tell GPT-6 that it's in charge of building GPT-7. Um, Seems like some situations we could consider here are GPT-6 is misaligned. Um, let's consider the case where GPT-6 was aligned, and then it trains GPT-7, and then uh, GPT-6 like tried to align GPT-7 to us, but then maybe it failed, and now GPT-7 is misaligned. You aren't clearly you aren't clearly doomed at this point, right? So for example, like just after it's trained GPT-7, maybe GPT-6 doesn't trust GPT-7 yet, and so you still have the chance for GPT-6 to do a bunch of alignment work on GPT-7, or like try to measure whether it's misaligned or not, try to give it a bunch of honeypots. GPT-6 could also deploy GPT-7 in ways that where GPT-7 is controlled, such that we're going to be safe even if GPT-7 is misaligned. Um, and so I don't think that we are at a point of no return, at the point where we have trained a successor, at the point where we've trained GPT-7 that is like egregiously misaligned and
mm,
conspiring against us. However, I think that if we decide to trust GPT-7 and it is egregiously misaligned, if it was also like if an AI is capable enough to obsolete human research scientists and research engineers, and is in charge of the AI company, and it's egregiously misaligned, it seems really hard to recover from that situation because that AI has a lot of options for just like continuing AI development, and then like taking over at some point later.
mm.
So there's kind of a quantitative question here. Like it is a little, it is a little rough. Like AIs that are capable enough of replacing human labor for research, science, and engineering are not clearly capable enough that they're able to take over the world. And so, if you want to say that this AI eventually takes over the world, your argument probably has to rely on saying that it manages to align a later AI to it, and then that later AI lets this first AI take over the world. And so the arguments are a bit complicated. I think they get into this stuff in AI 2027, which I just generally think is a pretty good resource for all these arguments.
Kevin, do you have a question or should I keep going? I have a
Yeah,
question
if you
about like
yeah, you can keep going.
subversion.
It's all
So
good.
your paper, like subversion strategy eval. So you kind of have like I guess like three kind of things here. Like there's like situational awareness of a model, like its strategic reasoning, and then like its ability to take actions. Like of these three, like which one do we need to like focus most of our efforts on, or like what's kind of like the keystone of these three?
So sorry, by that you mean so in this paper, we talk about the prerequisites required for misaligned AI to be able to
Mm.
cause catastrophic outcomes for us,
Yeah.
like escaping from our control. And we named these three prerequisites, one of which was situational awareness, which is the extent to which it understands its situation. Two is the extent to which it can formulate a good plan for subverting our safety measures. And three is the extent to which it can execute on one of these plans. Um, I would say I don't really have a sense of which one of these is going to be like the binding constraint on the AIs. It's probably going to be different for different AIs. Um, yeah, my
I,
guess is that yeah, I'm really unsure which of those is going to end up being most important. They all seem pretty important to me.
do you think situational awareness can like happen even without like permanent states? Like I know that was one of the important things like you guys like looked at, right? And subversion strategy eval, like getting rid of those like permanent memory states. But like can a theoretically like very intelligent model do that even without like permanent states?
So the thing so in this paper, the thing you're getting at is so a difference between trying to secure yourself against a misaligned AI and trying to secure yourself against a misaligned human is that the misaligned AI is effectively having its memory wiped all the time. So, for instance, like if you have a spy inside your organization, they generally remember what they did yesterday. Whereas if you have a AI, which you're trying to use as part of your organization, then every time you send it a query, it doesn't necessarily have any previous state except in as much as you put that state in the prompt. And so one difficulty the AI has when it's trying to strategize for how to defeat your safety measures is it might have to do so in a stateless way, right? It might have to come up with a subversion strategy which works even though it doesn't get to maintain state from between queries. Um, so uh, we didn't really think of this in terms of the lack of state, making it so the AI was less able to uh, be situationally aware. Though that is also true. We mostly just thought about the problem of the AI as a result of being stateless, like having to like it has to like come up with like different kinds of plans. It has to come up with like the kinds of plans that work, even though it doesn't have state.
Hmm. I see, I see. We actually have a question in the chat. So Piano Man
So
on Slack said, what is your AI of choice?"
uh, I use a mixture of Claude and ChatGPT.
Okay, I see, I see.
Yeah, no. I like Claude's personality better. But I like deep research. I pay for like the pro OpenAI thing, but not the pro Anthropic thing.
Hmm. Same, same. I'm kind of more of a Claude user. I think Kevin, you're a ChatGPT
Yeah,
diehard, right?
I'm a OpenAI simp.
Okay, okay, very
Okay,
reasonable.
Kevin, do you want to
Yeah.
question?
I think one interesting thing, like I've heard about, like one concept in AI control that people have been talking about is like having these smaller, less capable models doing oversight over like bigger, maybe untrusted, potentially misaligned models. And like over the weekend, I was at the chai workshop, and like what Max Tegmark was talking about was like making an analogy to like a dog maybe walking a human on a leash, and maybe like, although that might not like, be like the right analogy there, it's like does raise the question of whether or not this is like a sustainable control, like sort of protocol. So I was just like wondering what your thoughts on this approach was.
I mean, definitely doesn't seem sustainable. So as we argue in our post, untrusted smart models and trusted dumb models, which is where we introduced, I think, this argument. Like the basic idea is like I don't believe that the current AIs are scheming against us. And this is mostly just because they seem too incompetent to scheme against us. Um, but with future AIs, maybe they're going to be more competent, such that I believe that they will be capable of scheming against us. But we're still going to have AIs that are as dumb as current models. And so we're still going to trust the current dumb models or like models that are as dumb as the current models. Um, but as you say, like this just seems very unscalable, right? Like as we think about like the capabilities of AI improving over time, at some point it's going to get to the capability level where it's like capable enough to like scheme against us. And at that point, as the AIs gets smarter, the capability gap between trusted models and untrusted models just like gets bigger and bigger, right? Like there's no mechanism by which the capability level of trusted models increases over time once you've hit the point of having any untrusted models. So yeah, absolutely, the control stuff seems fundamentally to scale poorly. I think like the reason why I'm excited about it is I think that at the particular capability level where AIs are first posing a lot of existential risk, um, I think that the control style stuff seems like it might reduce risk a lot.
Yeah, so I wanted to like talk a little bit more about some of the recent stuff you did, like Control Z. So
Mhm.
maybe like could you give a few like TLDR points about how resampling protocols and some of the other work you've been doing could contribute to like some of the control stuff?
Yeah. So in this paper, Control Z. So this was a um, I'm just going to give like a random amount of context on this. Like
Okay.
we have an AI working in an agent context inside doing some like software engineering tasks on some like Linux machine.
Mhm.
And we want to make it so that we can get the AI to write some bash scripts without doing this bad action, which in our case is downloading and executing some malware. Um, so as you said, a very simple baseline strategy is what we call trusted monitoring with auditing, which is you every time you have it so that your agent is basically this powerful untrusted model. And every time it proposes a bash command to run, you show that to a trusted model, a dumber model, and then you ask it to rate how suspicious it was. And then the top 1% of suspicions of actions, we forward that action to a human or like an auditor, like some expensive rare process that looks at it and tells us whether that looks like an attack attempt. And then we consider it to be a win if we audit things that are actually attack attempts. So the basic issue with auditing is that we can only afford to do it extremely rarely, right? Like we can only afford to have humans look at things a tiny, tiny proportion of the time. And so even if your trusted model is really good at distinguishing between things that are attacks and things that are not attacks, it's really hard to choose things. Like basically your classifier has to have an absurdly small false positive rate. Like you can like it's like if I give you like 1 million commands to read, and 10 of them are attacks. Sorry, I give you 1 million commands to read, and you have to pick the like 1,000 that are going to be reviewed, and only one of them is an attack. And you have to make sure that the attack is in that 1,000 that you sample to review. It's just really hard because there's going to be like a bunch of stuff that spuriously looks suspicious over the course of these 1 million commands. Um, and so, uh, one thing you could do is instead of just using this trusted monitor score in order to decide when to audit, you could also decide that when things are not, if they're not in the top 1% of suspiciousness, but they are in the top 5% of suspiciousness, we could say, all right, well, we can't afford to audit this, but we can throw it away and resample another action from the untrusted model. And that way, if it was an attack, well, we're not going to detect that it was an attack, but at least the attack is going to fail, and we're gonna survive. So that's like the basic idea with resample protocols. And then the slightly non-trivial thing about resample protocols and why they're handy is, suppose your AI. Suppose your AI wants to attack you over the course of many different actions in a trajectory. Like it's gonna try it like wants to like download this malware and then execute the malware. And suppose it decides it's gonna do this by like doing a sneaky action in 6 parts. Uh, your AI has to how do I say this? Like if your AI is only attacking in like a single action, then it's very cheap for the AI to just stop, like call off the attack at any point. Like there's nothing wrong from the AI's perspective with when it proposes an action only attacking with a 1 in 10 probability or like a 1 in 1,000 probability, because it's like not particularly costly for it to stop. Whereas if the attack requires multiple steps, then once it's started the attack, it's really strongly incentivized to not just like call it off. Like if the attack is like a 6-step attack, and the AI just like has a 50% chance of like giving up on the attack, at every step, then it's only going to actually complete it 1 time in 32 because of like 2 to the power of 5.
Mhm.
And this means that there's like way more opportunities for you to catch one of the early steps. And so like the basic moral of the story is when attacks are multiple steps long, the AI is forced to be pretty consistent about the later steps in the attack. And this produces a signal which you can pick up by like if you want to know how suspicious of the AI's actions to be, you can repeatedly resample its actions. And then if lots of them look pretty suspicious, that's like a strong signal that it's attacking you that like lets you get a better signal of whether to audit.
Yep, makes sense, makes sense. And
Uh,
I think I'm a shift it a little bit. Sorry, Rohan, but
okay.
I'm a shift it by actually like plugging Rohan. So Rohan's like really into interp stuff actually, and he has like this YouTube channel where he has like a bunch of animated stuff about some interp work he's doing. So
Hmm.
I know like Buck, you used to do a little bit of like interp research, like you were on the
Hmm.
IOI paper. So I was just
I was.
wondering, what is like your perspective on interp as like a field right now, and like what its impact could be on AI safety. Is it just like too new, too slow? What are your thoughts on it?
What's happening with this video again?
We're just
How
gonna
broadly
like
is it going to be distributed?
not too broadly, just like hack clubbers who are interested, but yeah,
Great.
feel free to speak your
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah. So yeah, yeah, I worked on interpretability for a year in 2022. Um, this year included the IOI paper, which I think was like a pretty cool interpret paper, like arguably the like best circuit analysis of the year, and also incidentally done by Rowan Wang, who went by the name Kevin Wang at the time, who was amusingly a rising senior in high school when he did that paper. Like he was the lead author, which I think is sort of an underrated fun fact. And then we also like, yeah, so I spent that year doing interpretability research. Now, I was younger and dumber back then, and so I was like slower than I would have been nowadays, and I was like less experienced at managing a team. We basically stopped doing interpretability shortly after I invented causal scrubbing, which is an algorithm for determining how good interpretability explanations are. So the basic idea was like causal scrubbing is like an algorithm for given some claim about what is happening inside a neural net, it like gives you a set of intervention experiments to do that like like let you measure how good the explanation was. So for example, um, the IOI paper claims that like certain heads in the model are previous token heads, and like it was claiming like, oh yeah, all the information about what the previous token was at a particular sequence position was coming through one of these heads. And the IO and like causal scrubbing would basically say like, oh, well, if you're saying that like all that information came from the previous token heads, like these particular heads, then I should be able to like fuck up everything else in your like I should be able to like do these interchange experiments where I like swap out the activations for all the other heads, and that shouldn't cause a problem for you, right? Um, and so so we like used causal scrubbing to measure the accuracy or like the faithfulness of a bunch of interpretability explanations that we were familiar with at the time or that had been published, like the IOI stuff, induction heads, and some other work that we hadn't published that was interpretability research. And we just found that all these explanations sucked according to this metric that I had come up with. And then I was like, whoa, interesting. I really like I'd thought that induction heads were like a like circuit in these models. Like I thought that like induction heads were like a literal explanation of what those heads are doing inside these models. I guess that was just false. Like, damn. Uh, and then like we kind of had this crisis of faith where we were like, we really thought we were reverse engineering neural nets, but like maybe this was an illusion. Um, and so that's why I stopped like, and then I had this like really frustrating experience where like I think that the field of interpretability is like really like has terrible epistemics. Like I think like there's just like heaps of like trashy research in there that like absolutely should not be accepted into conferences and often like never makes it into conferences. Like the Anthropic people like mostly don't submit their work to peer review, and I think they would get rejected from conferences often. And I think that the conferences would be right to reject their work because of a bunch of issues I have with it. So I found that so I basically I was like, this field is like super messed up. The results are way worse than people think. Um, it's and then like it's just like such an epistemic mess of a field. It's also super popular, and I have better ideas. I have like other work that I'm excited about doing, so I'm going to stop working on Interp. So that's what I did.
Makes sense. So Vihan, somebody who's in the call, I think he can't unmute his mic, but he DM'd me his question. So he says, as much as you're comfortable sharing, how have you changed like aspects of your personal life and how you prepare for the future, given your opinions on the probability of AI going wrongly?
Yeah. So I mean, like for context, I started worrying that I'm 31. I started thinking about AI safety stuff when I was 16 or 15 or something. I like moved to America. I was like involved with like Less Wrong, great website. You should check it out. And effective altruism and stuff from back in the day. And then moved to America from Australia when I was 19. And immediately met like Elias Yudkowsky and a bunch of these people. So and then started working at Miri on AI safety stuff at when I was like 23. So. Um, like I would say that the probability of so I think like the way that thinking like about short AI timelines affects your life is like partially via the possibility of good outcomes and partially by the possibility of bad outcomes. Like I think that for example, I feel somewhat like I think there's like a serious chance both of like getting killed in the next couple years and also of like retiring in the next couple years. So there's like a lot of fun things like you know I'm like when I think about like, should I like go on long, fun vacations with my wife? I'm like, well, on the one hand, maybe I'll be like dead in 3 years. And if I fucking like, as I'm dying, I'm not going to be like, I really wish that I'd spent more time like screwing around with my wife going on vacation. Um, And on the other hand, maybe things will go well and I'll like have heaps of time for vacation. In that case, I'll be like, hell yeah. I'm like glad that I worked really hard for these last couple of years. So it has like that kind of effect. I mean, it makes I invest differently. Like I'm like kind of long AI uh, in my personal investments, which are are not very important compared to how much money a lot of other people have. But I guess like the short AI timelines. Um, those are the main ways that they've affected my personal life. Like, I don't know, I like went on a trip recently to visit my family in Australia where I was like partially like, well, I should like see Australia like before I die, like again. Uh so I don't know how much that answers your question.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it's also interesting for like people like me and Kevin who are like slightly younger, like starting our careers. It's like, man, like what do we do? What do you do?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like it's unknown
Sounds really
unknown.
confusing. It was really crazy to me. So like I used to be like, I'm pretty good at PyTorch, right? Like I'm pretty good at like I don't know how much you guys have learned like, dumb like PyTorch mask manipulation stuff where like, T dot gather, like torch dot gather with like this tensor and like this tensor dot reshape minus one dot expand, whatever, whatever. And like I was so proud of myself 3 years ago for being like so fast at this compared to like young whippersnappers or whatever. But now I'm just like, you would never get a human to do that. Like the AI is just like crush me effortlessly at and like similarly with web development, I used to be proud of my web development. It's like it's pretty crazy just to like feel so obsoleted in skills that I used to be proud of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's true. Kevin, do you have another question or could I ask
Yeah,
one?
I just want to add
Okay.
on to that, like the obsolescence stuff. So like I'm in high school, I do like a lot of Olympiad stuff, and just like seeing the benchmarks for like Amy and like Usamo, Yusufo, like just like IOI questions, just like get crushed is like low-key crazy. But I just want to add
Yeah,
that.
it makes me glad that I didn't invest effort into like being good at competition math.
Mm,
It's still fun,
Been
but
pretty
like
brutal.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
yeah. Okay,
Rohan,
so
did you have? Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. I guess like we're already like sort of adjacently touching on this. But now there's like a lot more like societal awareness of like the dangers of AI. Like Amode is like going on various like news programs and like there's like different even like in social media and other things like the public's like generally um like becoming aware and we also have now like models like Claude 4 was like doing like things like blackmail and like Bora was doing things like sycophancy and stuff. Like how should the public like and the world generally like prepare for, models that are like super capable persuaders and like maybe even blackmailers or things like that?
I mean, I would have said that the main like uh if I got to like make a recommendation to the public at large, I think my like m main recommendation would be uh AI companies should not build AIs that are capable of taking over the world. At least until they have some good reason to think the AIs like won't take over the world. Secondary request, AI companies shouldn't develop AI in such a way that individual humans could take over the world. For example, I just don't want like Sam Altman or Trump or like Xi Jinping as God Emperor. I just like don't want any of those options. And I think that like I think it's like ridiculous that the AI company it's like from the perspective of the risks that companies are normally allowed to impose on the world. I think it's like ridiculous and atrocious that AI companies are allowed to impose the kinds of risks that they're expected to impose shortly. AI companies like behave quite dishonestly and sloppily with respect to mitigating risk, and I think it would be very reasonable for society to demand much better of them. In terms of what society should particularly do in terms of getting ready for AI companies to build AIs that can like blackmail people and stuff, I don't know. I mostly don't think about those risks because I'm like mostly focused on risks that seem like kind of more acute. Um, I'm sure there's stuff to do. I think like it would be pretty reasonable. Well, like one obvious intervention for this is just like demand that AI companies okay, so like in terms of like specific policy stuff, I think that, for example, Congress is currently considering uh, making it so that like preempting all state legislation on AI. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but
Yeah.
like I think it would be good if it's possible for states to legislate AI. One way of regulating AI companies is to just have clarity on liability. So it's already the case that AI companies are liable for damage done to the world by their products if they behave recklessly when providing those products. So like one story for how we might be okay from like the AI is blackmailing people or whatever is if all the AI companies are like, I'm gonna get sued if my AI is used to blackmail a bunch of people. I guess I'd better try really hard to make sure it doesn't blackmail a bunch of people. Or provide some kind of defense to the world against blackmailing or whatever so that I can go ahead with my work. So I think that that kind of liability regime leading to AI companies having to behave more responsibly would be good. Notably, this would the main reason why I'm reluctant to push for that kind of thing is that I think open weight models like Llama or DeepSeek or whatever are pretty good for like doing safety research that prevents AI takeover. And I think that AI takeover is like so much worse than increased amounts of like blackmail and scams or whatever that I would rather like pay the cost of more blackmails and scams in return for more safety research done on open weights models, such that I'm reluctant to push for not doing open weights models releases.
Mm, I see. Yeah.
I
Kevin,
guess
do you
the connection to the open weight models is like liability would dissuade that like releasement of open weight models.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If companies were liable for crimes done with their open weight models, above some threshold, then they would not be able to,
Hmm.
they wouldn't be able to like release open weight models at certain capability levels. And I probably like would rather that they did release those models and then we just like eat the costs. I mean, the main cost of releasing those open weight models is probably that, in expectation, they'll kill, hundreds of thousands or millions of people thanks to bioweapons. Like thanks to enabling random people to build bioweapons.
I guess when you're talking about the whole like systems and liability and things like that, I a common argument against um I guess like slowing down measures or like extra measures like that is like China is gonna build it like stronger AI. So like we shouldn't do anything to like kneecap our AIs or like something
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, I think those arguments are often made in pretty bad faith. I think I would prefer that the US had an advantage in AI over China because I don't like a bunch of things that China does, like, for example, not being democratic and engaging in like destruction of cultures and like just like various human rights abuses, which I think America has a much better record on and like systematic reasons to be more optimistic about us in the future. I think that there's obvious things you could do to cause the US to have more of a lead over China, like for example, being stricter on export controls. If I were in charge of this, I'd be like, two goals are prevent AIs from taking over, and like more generally, make it so that at the point where AIs are really powerful, we don't end up with like some terrifying concentration of human power or an AI takeover, and also try to cause there to be a US lead over China, probably good on the margin. And then I would just be like looking for, in cases where there's policies that have a trade-off between these, try to look for ones where like the trade-off is more attractive. Yeah, I don't think that a lot of the restrictions that we've been talking about here would actually do much to cause China to have less of a lead. Like, so, like, of my favorite regulations on AI companies, like, I feel like the regulations that I want on AI companies, like, a lot of them are just like good for the US China lead. So, for example, one big problem I have with AI companies is that their security is shitty. And so China can just like hack them all the time if it wants to, and maybe it does. Like, OpenAI was hacked. Like their whole Slack was hacked like a year before last or last year. And like this and like regulations which force OpenAI to not constantly get hacked by China are like clearly good from a like preventing China from like catching up perspective. The other point is like Leopold Aschenbrenner got fired from OpenAI partially for writing an internal memo which had the amazingly offensive title of "OpenAI is China's leading AGI lab," where he was basically saying like in as much as the security inside OpenAI is as bad as it currently is, and we are as leaky as we currently are, we are the leading lab for like we are the biggest contributor to AI capabilities in China. So I think like in as much as you want to argue that we need to have a US lead, like this suggests that AI companies should be behaving super differently from how they're currently behaving. And in particular, it absolutely does not suggest that AI companies should just be broadly unconstrained.
Hmm.
People just lie about this all the time. Like the quality, like in around yeah, the quality of argumentation on this topic is just atrocious. Like
Hmm.
the AI companies are just like absolutely full of shit
Yeah.
on a lot of this stuff.
Hmm.
Another question I had was like model distillation. Do you think that's like a really big problem, or is it just like China will like just get the like advances in algorithms, they have better like energy, like stuff
Like
like
you're worried
that?
about, sorry, you're saying like to what extent should we think that a mechanism of AI models being diffused to China is China distilling by
Yeah.
using the inference from like Western labs?
Yeah,
I
like do you
think that
think
this
distillation? Yeah.
I think this is a real issue. I think that at a lot of the points where I suspect, um, I think like at the points where AI is really powerful, this is going to be like really easy to address. Um, and
Mhm.
so I think that like the AI companies just totally could address this. Like I think that for at the point where the AIs are automating all AI research, for example, I think it's pretty plausible that they're mostly going to be internally deployed. Um, and there's going to be like bigger gaps between like internal deployment and external deployment than there currently are. And obviously that like mostly obviates the problem. I think there's a bunch of other strategies you could do to like mostly mitigate risks from distillation. I feel like people being worried about distillation, as far as I could tell, is just like an op by OpenAI, or in substantial part, I think it was just like them spreading misinformation in DC to like deflect blame from themselves for like DeepSeek.
Yeah, so the reason like I'm asking about this question is for like I do policy debate in high school, and like one of the things like our coaches wanted us to read on the affirmative of the topic was like about Chinese IP theft because of model distillation. And like one of the like biggest papers on this was like this report by a think tank called CSIS. Like reading through
Mhm.
the like report from the think tank, it like logically does not make sense. Like the arguments they're extrapolating. They're like, oh, distillation in the future means that China wins like the race or like closes the gap, which means that they spread like authoritarianism to every single corner of the world and means that like blah blah blah, we have the race. So yeah, that's why I like brought up the question.
Yeah,
Background.
I haven't read that paper. I talked to some people in DC about this a few months ago, and I thought that the stuff they were
Hmm.
saying made like no fucking sense. So, uh, yeah, so like I'm very scared. Sorry, I'm like there's some versions of this argument that work. Um, yeah, I mean, another crucial part of the argument I was making earlier is in as much as a lot of the important deployment is internal, then obviously distillation isn't a problem. And it's very, the CSIS people probably disagree with me on that because they're imagining like broad external deployment. And the main reason I disagree with them is probably because of something about me expecting intelligence explosions to occur more sharply. Um, and so that's like a reasonable disagreement for people to have that probably explains part of the disagreement. But yeah, you should think about it. And I think I feel like the fundamental like the fundamental dynamics here are not that complicated. So if you think it through and you feel like the argument doesn't make any sense, you're like probably right. Or like there's a good chance you're just right and the paper is wrong.
I kind of want to I know we're kind of reaching the end of time, right? But I want to just circle back one time to what you said earlier. Like Kevin asked about, like, is this like a scalable thing? Like AI control strategies, and you kind of
Hmm.
answered like no, in the long term, no. Like in the near term, yes. Then long term, no. So like, what do you see as the most promising way for like GPT like 20, like to make sure that we're aligned? Like, is this like
Yeah.
a training thing or monitoring thing or post-training thing or yeah?
Yeah, and it's so yeah, as you say, like at some point we're gonna have to hand over control to some AI, and just like trust it and like give up on the prospect of being safe via it being unable to take control itself. In terms of so AI that we should, in my opinion, like the basic strategy we should play is like right now the AIs are getting more powerful. At some point, we need to start controlling them because they're powerful enough that they might be misaligned. Then, so we take those AIs that we were controlling, and then we try like so we have some AIs that are powerful enough that we think they might be misaligned, like they're untrusted. Then we try to make AIs at that level of capability that we trust, like that we now are confident are not scheming against us. Um, in order to do that, like there's a bunch of different things you could try. I think most of them are going to be train time interventions or like post-training time interventions. The basic strategy I would propose here is come up with some way of evaluating whether models are aligned, and then just like iterate randomly on like aspects of your training process, and then like see whether the AI seems to be aligned now. Uh, and then just like do that and hope that you get an AI that is aligned. Obviously, there's like a sorry, and you should like throw in like techniques that like seems to do helpful things in analogous situations with smaller models, and like you should do things that seem a priori smart and like blah 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 blah. But I think that like trying to get to an AI that you are happy to defer to is like the main thing I would recommend shooting for there. Ryan Greenblatt, who I work with, is currently working on writing up a version of this plan. Josh Clymer, who works at Redwood Research, has some less wrong posts about like his favorite version of this plan. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm sorry if that wasn't a very specific set of proposals there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was actually really interesting. Like the randomly changing things. That's interesting. Some sort of like evolutionary or just like, you
well,
know,
I'm mostly just like describing like I'm describing like how ML works as well, right? Like, suppose you want to like improve the transformer, you just like change shit randomly slash based on good ideas,
that's true.
mostly experimenting at small scales, and then try to extrapolate what's going to work at your big
That's
scale.
true. Yeah.
And it's just like it's harder in our case to evaluate how promising a change is. And so we're going to have to do more work and more complicated work in order to evaluate how like whether a change has improved things.
And then I guess a huge role that could like play in that is like automating alignment research too, like not only like capabilities but alignment. Like that's something
Yeah.
I'm really interested in. But yeah, uh, Kevin, are we at the end of our time? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was
Yeah, we
a
are.
pretty
I have to
good
go talk to
talk.
someone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Buck. We really enjoy this conversation.
Yeah, it
Thank
was
you,
fun talking to
Buck.
you guys. Good luck with the AI safety stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
your time.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. See you later. Bye.